Hi everyone, Alon Litzia, the CEO of October Health. Really excited. I've got a founder, I've got an entrepreneur, a great SA success story with me. I have Vangelis Kyriazis.
Nailed it.
Who's the CEO and founder or co-founder of Syft Analytics. Really great story. We were neighbors back in the day in a previous office block, but really excited to have you here and hear a bit about your story. So thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Great to be on, Alon. Looking forward to today's chat.
Yeah, same. Yeah. So I always love to start off these discussions with a bit of your background. You're a CA, right? And don't always, I guess there are a lot of CAs or entrepreneurs, but tell us a bit about that journey.
Awesome. So I think I dived into my articles to become a chartered accountant back at one of the financial institutions in South Africa, Investec. But pretty early on, I knew that I was keen to jump into my own thing and pursue some of my own ventures. Both my parents were entrepreneurs, my mom in the restaurant business, my dad in construction. So I think it was always my dream to leave corporates and try start something. So finished my accountancy articles back in 2015. Left with just my Provident Fund and a slim little bit of savings and thought I'd pursue some awesome ideas, but pretty quickly ran out of money and decided to start an accounting firm because I think there's this correlation between exciting businesses and maybe the low chance of making money and a little bit more boring businesses or traditional businesses, but a higher chance of success. So that was early 2016. Tried a few tech ideas and then started an accounting firm because I thought whatever I'd start in the future, I'd probably need accounting to go along with it.
Okay, so you didn't leave your comfort of the corporate world with that killer idea. You just took the plunge.
Exactly. And I think it's hard with any idea. I think you naturally open new doors. So it's great to have an idea, but before you start something or actually dive into something, new doors start to appear the further you get into it. So I was like, let me take the plunge, let me dive in, and then founded the accounting firm, which actually ended up leading to Syft Analytics. At the firm, we were looking to provide our clients with visual reports. Think of small business owners. They don't want to see a balance sheet. They want to see a visualization of their business to help them make decisions. And we were building that in Excel. And we thought, okay, we could do this a lot quicker if we built a software on top of our general ledger software that we were using at the time to automate this process. And that's sort of where the birth of Syft came from. But again, we didn't think it would be like a software business that we would sell on a subscription basis off the bat. We maybe thought it would be a channel for funding for banks to actually lend money to these businesses. All of the founders' history was in sort of the banking and financial realm. And we didn't really know SaaS or software as a service as like a category and a space that we could commercialize and make money from.
Okay, so you thought it would be an add-on basically to differentiate you as a firm.
Yes, and we were actually using it ourselves exclusively in the beginning to provide our clients with reports. And soon after that, we thought, let's actually push this a bit further. You know, it's great that we've got a differentiator for our firm, but other firms could use this too. So let's start ringing up other accounting firms basically in South Africa and be like, hey, we've got this tool. You can automate this process of providing insights and analytics to your client base. Do you want to give it a try?
And yeah, so I guess it was just driven by necessity or driven by the reality of what you were seeing on a day-to-day basis.
Exactly. We had a good problem to solve internally. You know, we wanted to provide these 30 clients with reports, and instead of spending 2 hours per client every month, we were solving our own problem. And that sort of led us to know that this problem is experienced by not just us, but other firms and even businesses direct. You know, a business would have its own sort of FM or financial team preparing these reports every month.
And what did that journey look like time-wise? Because often, again, I think everyone thinks entrepreneurship, like overnight success. You left the bank around 2016.
Yeah.
You started the accounting firm shortly after that. What sort of timelines are we looking at?
Quite long, yeah. Longer than you expect, I think. So Syft was born in September 2016. So, and we had our first users in 2017. But it was a long, hard, probably 3 years. It was mid 2019, and we had built up 50 customers. And I was still running the firm full time. My other co-founders were still doing consulting work, and we were pushing money into this business to continue to build, continue to get customers. So I'd probably say 3 long, hard years to try find product market fit, putting money in rather than taking money out of the business, and working on it part time. By mid 2019, we knew that we had like something a bit more substantial, enough features that people were willing to try it out, pay us money, or switch from the existing providers. And then we thought, let's double down on it. And we ended that year with just over 200 customers. So it sort of scaled up quite well in 2019. I think a combination of critical mass of features, but also more focus on the business. And I only ended up joining the business full time at the end of 2019. So I was still funneling money into it. I remember my wife saying, if it doesn't work out by the end of this year, I think leave this.
Just goes back to the safe business.
Focus on the accounting firm, leave the software business. So it was kind of a good turning point, and a good year for us back then.
Okay, amazing. So, I mean, it's also an interesting journey from a funding perspective, because often people associate tech with VC funding, but you took that boring business and you used that to fund investment in the technology and kind of really perfect the product.
100%. And it did help us focus more on making money rather than spending money, because we were spending our own money, which was limited, very limited at the time. And that longer road probably made us have more focus. With limited resources, you can't build everything. You're quite like hyper focused, but definitely a longer road. The 3 years it's a long period of time to keep going at something before you start to see some sort of success. So a good path though. I think the bootstrapped way can be like favorable for those reasons, but definitely longer than maybe someone that's raised funding. I think in South Africa, I mean, you probably have seen it as well, but I think funding, and the right funding, is hard to come by. There's not many VCs that know the SaaS space and can write checks that will help you scale it up very quickly. So I think we had to go down the bootstrapped road rather than looking at raising a round.
Yeah, and look, I don't think 3 years is anything to be ashamed of. I think that's really good going. I think maybe just to understand a bit of that journey as well. How did you build the tech? Did you have the expertise yourself? Did you have a dev team? What did that journey look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. All done in-house from day one. One of our co-founders and the CTO, actually more a finance background and also in banking, but a self-taught developer.
Okay.
And we're fortunate that he came on as a co-founder to actually build out the tech side of the business for us. And then since then, we've always had our own engineering team and kept it internal rather than outsourcing that. So pretty much everything from design to engineering is done in-house. And I think fortunate to have the right people in that space, because it is such a critical part of a software business.
Yeah. And that's your differentiator ultimately.
Yeah. And also working with like hundreds of thousands of entities, like big data, there's a lot coming into it. So in order for that system to run optimally all the time, you need the right people in those positions.
Makes sense. And I mean, you spoke about going from 50 to 200, right? Which is obviously a big jump in a year, right? 4 times. Was that all South Africa? What were some of those things that kind of clicked in place? You kind of described it. 50 feels like, the first signs of product market fit. 200, definitely product market fit in that short period of time. What kind of clicked in place?
I think we were fortunate to ride on the coattails of the drive towards cloud accounting, where businesses were migrating from desktop accounting to cloud accounting, things like Xero, which is online. So that's been a big shift over the last 10 years. And then we're also fortunate that because it's cloud accounting, it's all over and everywhere. So the first 50 customers were more South Africa, but as we started to grow, we sort of latched onto those coattails, and suddenly we had customers all over the world. So today we 80% global, 20% local, which has been awesome to build a business in South Africa that serves the world. But I think we're just great macroeconomic trends that we could jump on. And as Xero was growing from 1 million businesses to 4 million, we could ride on that wave and sort of jump on that.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting for, anyone who's listening and is a founder or, in a business, and they're thinking about scaling. I think, something which I always say about South Africa is I think we've got some of the best talent in the world. And, I think you guys are one of those great success stories. But it's not easy being here, right? Yes. And selling and not being this well-known brand. And then you get the great, where you South Africa, that's a little bit unusual.
Yes.
How did you overcome that?
You're right. Probably COVID brought us closer to the rest of the world. You think of 2019 and video calls were not a thing.
Yeah.
Suddenly 2020, people didn't mind from Canada through to New Zealand jumping on a video call with you down in South Africa. And suddenly those barriers were broken. It didn't matter that we weren't exhibiting at in-person events in the US or the UK. Suddenly it leveled the playing field for us as a business. And us coming in from South Africa, we could go a little bit more aggressive from a pricing perspective because our underlying costs are a bit lower, mainly from a people perspective. So I think COVID was a net positive for our business and suddenly brought us South Africa into a level playing field. Post that, I think from 2020 onwards, it's sort of sustained. So we also sell to more SMB and lower end of the mid-market. So in that sort of space, it doesn't really matter being in person as much as being able to jump on a video call and for customers to self-serve. So maybe also the right segment of the market. I think if you're going for very big businesses and high contract value, you may struggle to not be in country.
Yeah, makes sense. And you've kind of spoken to like Xero, right? And someone was speaking to me and they kind of described it as you can sell three ways, right? You can sell to, you can sell through, and you can sell with, right? And it sounds like part of your strategy involved these partnerships. How did you think about it? How did you identify a partner that enabled you to unlock revenue?
Awesome. I think, it's a great question. It's like, how do you actually reach the customers? I think our partnerships have been key from day one. So Syft is an app on top of Xero. So you sort of need Xero as a starting point, and then you connect Syft to it to sort of unlock the insights in that data. So from day one, we were listed on their app store marketplaces, which drove some traffic for us globally, where customers sitting anywhere could find us and sort of sign up.
And that was automatic credibility as well, right?
Exactly. They vetted you. You've gone through some security checks. There's reviews, and you listed on their sites as an app partner. We also exhibit at events globally with accounting partners like Xero. We'll go to all their events and we'll establish a stand there. And that's a great way to meet like accountants and business owners. And then also back to hitting the phones. We've got an outbound cold calling sales development representative team, and we would actually target prospects, try get them into a demo. I think we're fortunate in South Africa to be able to have people, and we can still pursue an outbound strategy. So we never went down the sort of paid marketing realm. I think in B2B SaaS, it can get quite expensive quite quickly unless you maybe have a high contract value where you're recovering some of the costs of your paid advertising.
Okay, so and that outbound team is based here, kind of calling prospects elsewhere.
Yeah, so not easy being based in South Africa, serving customers from New Zealand to Canada. We've got teams starting at 4 a.m., finishing at sort of 1 p.m., and another team that starts at 2 p.m., working to 11 p.m. to serve the North American market. So sure. I think breaking up our team can be difficult. You've got big time zones to service, but we're also fortunate that we're not just in one economy, one market. Suddenly we can be serving customers around the world.
That's awesome. So is that on both the customer success side, the sales side?
Yeah, both. Okay. So we'll have pretty much around the clock support for customers. From a sales perspective, our team will close a deal, and then that will move over to customer success, where you'll get a dedicated account manager to keep building that relationship and sort of train and onboard you.
Awesome. I think something which I think often entrepreneurs find as the hardest part in figuring out your product market fit is who is your ideal customer, right? And who are you selling to? How did you go through that process? How did you identify who that ideal customer is? You spoke to that SMB, like kind of entry-level businesses, but how did you work that out? I'm sure it wasn't apparent up front.
I think because we were that accounting firm back in the early days, we first started selling strictly to accounting firms because we knew they had the same problem as we did.
Okay.
And there was this many-to-one relationship. We could sell to one accountant, but they actually represented 100 underlying businesses. So exclusively, we focused on accounting practices and bookkeepers off the bat, which was great because it kept us very focused and we knew their pain points: save time, make more money. by using the software. So we were probably like a 90% accountants and bookkeepers in terms of customers in the early days. But that started to shift more towards businesses direct, because suddenly bigger businesses would come to us to solve more complex problems. Again, it would always be a prerequisite that you perhaps a sizable business that where you have enough data, where insights and analytics make sense. You've got board reporting to do, divisional reports, you're looking to raise funding. So these are all reasons to understand your business. And then suddenly businesses started coming to us direct, mainly from marketplaces. But I think as well that the brand sort of became the biggest in the space, like reporting and insights on Xero, on things like QuickBooks and Sage. Suddenly we were a household name across those three.
Okay, so it wasn't pursuing those multiple strategies up front. It was, well, you actually reached a point of critical mass where you were, I guess, as a standalone, impressive enough for some of these larger businesses
to come to us direct. And I think it's, perhaps there's more businesses than accountants, which is good. But I think at first accountants were easy to focus on, and it kept it quite like focused for us and our teams that this is the problem we solve, this is how we talk to accountants, and then we could transition that to direct to business over time.
I think it's super interesting, and I think there's a lot of kind of literature around how you go from like that 0 to 1 and you cross the chasm. It sounds like those accounting firms were your way to do that.
Yes, 100%. I think it kept us focused. We could have conversations with them. We were accountants as well.
So we stood it better than anyone.
We spoke their language. I love 0 to 1, one of my favorite books as well, and Crossing the Chasm. So I like how you weave that in there though, Alon. But I think that hyper focus on just that segment was good in the beginning. And even from a feature perspective, we kept it like very simple. You could just generate a report and put a logo on it. And that was kind of like our V1 of functionality, and slowly started to add additional features that our customers were requesting over time.
Yeah. But how did you retain that product discipline? Because I think that's also a challenge, right? Because as much as I'm sure there was commonality across these different firms, how did you make sure that you were building in a way that was disciplined, right, and focused within that niche that you identified?
Yeah, good question as well. And it's also regional nuances. An accountant or bookkeeper in Australia, which is a very advanced market, cares more about advanced forecasting, whereas the US is a market that's not at the same level as Australia, and people are more transitioning to cloud, more care about reporting.
Interesting.
There's little nuances like that. So something that a feature for one market will be different to another. We've always been very, very high touch, even with serving like small customers at a low contract value. We talk to all of our customers all the time, and it's a very high touch sales and customer success approach. So there's things like product roundtables where we're getting feedback, we're monitoring usage of functionality in the tool. What are people using? What are they liking? What is actually getting traffic, and then investing more in that functionality. And also building, you probably want to build more towards the top of the funnel at some point, like building at the bottom of your product where maybe 1% of users will get this advanced thing. It's not always the best. Rather build something where 100% of users would be able to utilize it. But a lot of experimentation here. We like to go to production quickly, get a V1 out, let users play around with it and get feedback from there. So I think we still move very quick, rather than being like perfection could sort of be a thorn in our side. So we'd rather always throw out a V1 and iterate and build from that using customer feedback.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, at Uber, we used to say done's better than perfect, right?
Nice.
And using that data and iterating and is, I guess, you can stay in this theoretical world forever, right? But until it's in a user's hands, you're never going to know what works or doesn't. So I think it's another lesson for entrepreneurs.
And you're still going to make mistakes. We've made mistakes where we've built things that aren't at the utilization we would expect or aren't actually moving the mark. So I think to be able to push through that and to then refocus resources is also important.
Yeah, so I think that's a good segue, I think, around, I think people listening or, people reading headlines see it as a, straight line up, but I'm sure it always wasn't easy.
Yeah.
The road of entrepreneurship is not an easy one. How did you, firstly, for yourself, for your kind of within your team of co-founders, remain motivated when it wasn't always kind of straightforward?
sort of and clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think hard years in the beginning, you want to keep going, you want to keep building. I think maybe also fortunate that we were all relatively young, sort of like late 20s, and didn't have too many responsibilities and sort of like fixed expenses at the time, which gave us more freedom and flexibility to experiment and take a longer road. We're a team of 4 co-founders, so I think that also helps like sort of boost the cohesion and the energy levels.
And sorry to throw out the train, but were there complementary skills within that set of co-founders? How did you guys come together?
I'd say so. I guess one sort of engineer / our CTO, me on the accounting side, and then the other 2 founders more maths and finance. So
interesting.
All very much from like
a data analytics perspective
and like banking background. So I think a very heavy sort of like finance background across all of us, and then some accounting skill and some engineering capacity as well. So maybe not diverse enough. We didn't have design, we didn't have sort of some other skills that could have been useful. And then as we got into it, I think we've always like the business may be fortunate that we've always sort of grown month on month. So we've never sort of had a down month in like 8 years, which also keeps you quite positive, and you sort of focused on, cool, let's keep going. We're adding customers, we're adding revenue. So you just sort of, there's some natural positivity. And then the team's also like quite a young team as well, but like good energy and very like positive about the business. I think it's cool to be in South Africa and be globally competitive. So it kind of feels like you're on a cool mission because there's other competitors in New Zealand, Australia, the UK, and it's nice that we've got something coming out of SA that's at that scale. It's kind of like
you got the best businesses in the world using your tech as well, right?
Yeah, it's a cool validation. You feel like you're getting the mission seems correct.
Yeah. So I think it's a great kind of transition into talking about team.
Cool,
right? I think obviously you're a team of co-founders up front. You're 75 people today, so it's big growth. You mentioned the complexity of shift work, right? Probably a lot easier for the team working normal hours versus the team that's working that graveyard shift. But how do you first of all hire the right people, right? How do you identify the right talent? Startups are very different to corporate environments. How do you identify those traits in the people that you hire that make them, a success at Syft?
So we've always actually hired primarily on referrals. So from the beginning,
from within the team.
So I'd say even today, more than 80% of our current team is a referral from within the team. So we incentivize that with a referral bonus.
Okay.
But we also then know that at least from a character perspective and sort of like a drive perspective, that person's sort of pre-vetted. Which has been helpful. So that's, I think, helped us keep like a very sort of like strong core team, and there's some great bonds between the team. And then of course, some great candidates coming from like other sources, LinkedIn, advertising and recruitment. So that's one. The team is relatively young, and I think we've had intern programs. We've always invested quite a bit in building relationships with universities, and then having great graduates join the team, coming out with like top marks and things along those lines. So we do get really, really great applicants coming through, but it does mean our team's relatively young. So it's a lot of like learning and molding to do. But it's also nice to have a blank slate for people to start on. So average age is sort of 25.
Oh, wow, super young.
Yeah, very young.
So just to understand that, because I think like often startups, grad programs, that type of thing are a heavy investment on the team. And there's sometimes this mindset around, well, I need someone who can hit the ground running.
Yes.
Right. Versus the way you're looking at it, I've got a blank slate. I can kind of shape this individual. How do you kind of build that structure around a graduate program to set people up for that long-term success?
I think, nice question. That I think the way we saw it was there's not much existing SaaS skills in Johannesburg, for example. Not many people that have sold software or maybe been customer success for a software business. So we always had the opinion that regardless of who we brought in, whether they were experienced or grad, we'd have to spend a lot of time training them because it's not a sector that's quite prominent yet. And I think it's changed over the years as well. In terms of from a grad program and even an internship program, I think we were always, and because a lot of the team came through that, it kind of like keeps them incentivized back. They wanted to give back, and they know that they were in that position like just a few years ago. So I think that also kind of filtered into it. And again, we don't always get it right. I think you should have some attrition in your hiring. And I think you won't be getting your hiring 100% right all of the time. And probably a 10% error rate or higher is reasonable. So 1 in 10 people you hire probably aren't the right fit for the company or for themselves. They might want to be in a different space. So I think it's also about identifying that quite quickly and being honest with the staff member and the company around, is this the right fit for you? So I think we're also quite a little bit more focused on that now. And lots of lessons learned, I would say, over the time.
So scars along the way. But I think you touch on an important point, and you allude to like this kind of culture fit as much as the kind of the hard skills that a person needs, whether it's sales, engineering, or marketing, or design, whatever they're doing.
Yes.
How do you measure, or how do you interview for that culture fit?
Good question. I think I actually heard a really good point on this earlier in the week, and the gentleman I was chatting to said, like, would I want to invite this person to a braai at my house? Would I want them part of my like inner circle? So are they, I guess, like a good person from that perspective, or can you get along with them and do you want to work with them? The culture fit is probably also pre-vetted because it's a lot of referrals. So that helps. And then we also place quite a big emphasis on, have you achieved something like great in your life? Even if you are at a grad level, have you excelled at school or during your degree? Have you done something outside of that? It doesn't necessarily have to be academic, but something, you sort of represented, okay, that might be extreme, but South Africa at the sport, anything like that where someone's like overachieved in a certain like discipline is also something that we place quite a bit of emphasis on. And then again, we know that people are coming in pretty green, so we're willing to like invest and train. And I think because the team's pretty tight-knit in office, there's a lot of accountability that a team member has, not just to the company, but to their colleagues who also become their friends. So maybe it's sort of like a circular loop in all of that.
And it sounds like it's a demanding environment, but it sounds like you do a lot to create a fun environment. So
definitely,
are you kind of intentional in that? Like, how do you kind of sustain or create this fun environment?
I think it's critical with young grads or new people joining your business to drop into like a space where they can learn. So we're more in office than remote. We've got an optional remote sort of Wednesday, but we think younger people need to be in person to learn. And then the office has a lot of perks to keep you, if you're coming in, it must be a great place to work. So there's things like free food, free coffees, free drinks. We go through 1,000 Red Bulls a month. So, and you're quite a number. It's big. I think we're a big customer of Red Bull locally. So free snacks, things like that. Just make it like a good space to me. And then also like a comfortable environment. Lots of like team building things. So I think people feel like they are like well looked after, or the company is investing in making it a great place to be when you are in office.
And that's also not kind of run of the mill in South Africa, right? It's unusual.
Correct. It's a good differentiator we have. I think, it is a perk. So, it's a nice to have, and not everyone really needs that, but I think it's nice to have, and it keeps you focused on maybe the work rather than like distractions of like bringing lunch, having to do this, paying for it out of your own pocket. So I think it helps us retain talent over time.
Yeah, and a link to this, and I think, this culture that you've created obviously is part of it, but it's obviously, to achieve what you've achieved, you haven't done it because, people are doing the bare minimum. They're working really hard at the same time. So how do you sustain that, especially growing to 75 people? How do you sustain that high level of performance?
The Red Bull. I think, at the end of the day, the mission's cool because we're up against like these global competitors. We're probably pretty much a market leader in a number of like verticals within this reporting and analytics space globally. So a nice like success story, we the best at the world in this, which is cool. And then if people are putting in like big hours, I think like people see that because you're in office and you're like, sure, that guy's really going above and beyond to sort of deliver. Tough to drive home all the time, and you're never going to have all of the team working at like 110, 120%, but that's also probably not sustainable.
Yeah.
You want people to have a bit of balance in life as well. I think we are fanatical about the customers as well, like intense support. We all over issues. Like when people review us, it's always like the support team is like outrageous, and we go above and beyond for the customers. So I think having that like North Star of let's go all out for the customers also helps drive like some sort of value, that it's not just we're building this thing for the company to make money, but we're like helping people achieve what they need within their business and make better decisions in their business.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it is a critical piece that we've seen around, do people, whatever the role is, do you feel alignment to the bigger mission?
Yes.
Right. And it feels like that's definitely something that you're getting right within the organization.
Agreed. I think so. And yeah, it's nice. You don't really want people to leave, and also like top performers, but I think our attrition then is a lot lower. People are invested in the mission, and I think they are learning and growing. But that also means that the company needs to grow to sort of maintain that, So if you go through a few tough months where the company's not growing as fast, suddenly there's no growth for people, maybe growth to leadership positions. So you also need to balance that with company growing, team size growing, which creates like new roles and new challenges for the team. So maybe not too fast where they burn out, but at a good enough rate. So I think if we did have a period where it was a little bit slower and we weren't hiring as much, there wasn't much growth for the team, and then you actually start to lose more people because there's no internal growth for them. So
yeah, it's interesting. I guess it's like the important piece as well. When you're at that moment where you feel like you may be stagnating, how do you shift the momentum? Because all of this is a bit of a momentum game. Is there anything that you've felt like you got right, or was it how do you persevere through those periods?
Yeah, I think there's, being a business based in South Africa, we also like susceptible to maybe like global market changes. So suddenly rand strength is bad for us, and we make less locally to pay people. So that's maybe like an economic lens over that. And then we do take lots of bets, it's like, let's try this and see what pays off. So I think we are good at like rallying the team to move in a certain direction quite quickly. You don't want to always like turn the ship a hard 90 degrees, but I think it is about like trying new things and coming up with like new spaces. Let's build in this vertical because it's underserved, and then it's at least something exciting and new for the team to get by.
So you're continuously challenging yourself as a business, right?
Yeah.
Where's that new growth opportunity? It's not just, we can't just keep on doing the same thing and expect different results.
Agreed. We'll cannibalize things. We'll try things as well. We'll integrate with new systems and see what the market's like. That again, without taking the first few steps into like a new market or into like new functionality that might serve this business, you never know how it could pan out. So we do still have a lot of sort of like bets on the table, and a lot of like engineering, like move in this direction, let's try this. And we build a lot to
So I guess that it fail quickly as well, right?
Fail quickly, take that data and move to something next.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. Big congrats to you and the team. Excited to see where you go to as you kind of enter this next stage of your journey. I'm sure it's not the end of the Syft story. I'm sure it's just beginning. So thanks so much for sharing with the audience, with our listeners. I think so much around, real SA success story, outperforming, not just competing, but outperforming with, some of the biggest global names out there. So really inspirational. Thank you for joining. Thanks, Van, for sharing your story so openly. And
100%. Great to be on, Elon. Really enjoyed the chat, and thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.